So welcome everyone to the ArchiCAD coaching program call for February 27th, 2014. This is Bobrow speaking to you from San Rafael, California, where it's been raining off and on the last couple of days, which we're very thankful for because we've had a drought. Happy to get started here. I know that we have Greg Danskin had sent in a file with some questions. We can work on his stuff. Let's get Greg on the line here. Greg. All right, so Greg, I'm unmuting your line, so your mic is open. How are you doing?
Very good this morning, thanks, Eric.
So you're down in San Diego area?
Escondido.
Okay, so just north of San Diego. How's the weather down there?
Raining a little bit, but we had a job site meeting this morning, and it didn't rain us out. So
Okay, well,
kind of a heavy mist.
okay, good. All right, so let me bring up your question so that we have it on screen. All right, so you have a basic question about dealing with stories, wall heights, sloping residential roofs, and you want the walls and roofs to behave nicely, and you're asking about um, adding skins to the floor assembly area so you can stop the first floor wall at its plate line and start the second floor wall at the floor sheathing. So basically, how do you construct your model in sufficient detail that you're going to have a nice looking 3D view as well as nice looking sections and plans? So let's take a look at this particular project. So we are missing some things, but it looks like it's just zones and other attributes, so it won't affect the appearance of the plan or the section. So we can ignore that for now. Let's see. Right now we're on the first floor. Let's see what view. Okay, so we've got some plan views here. First floor plan is what we're on. Second floor. Okay, so you got a two-story building plus a roof there. Do you have any 3D views set up?
Just the one at the top.
At the very top, 3D view. Okay, so that turns on different layers, I assume, and let's take a look in 3D and see this project. Get this queued up here. Okay, so first glance looks like fairly clean. Obviously, we're not seeing anything for the building to sit on. Have you done any site work?
No.
Okay, all right. So that's not the question then. You were talking about having the question about how walls would join to each other from one story to another, and also how they would join to roofs. So let me just spin around to the back side of this side of the building where we have two-story construction. And should I cut a section through somewhere along here, somewhere along the back to examine
Yeah,
that?
you can probably take the S4 or S5.
All right, so let's go to S4 here, and let's see, get this so we can open it up wider here. Okay. So, I can see that things are basically lined up, but that you're not having, walls and floors sort of join in a clean way for a section. So we obviously have a situation here where, well, actually, tell me what's going on here with this. You have some, but you put in a joist here in this space. Is the sheathing supposed to be coming down and continuing up here? I mean, this is underneath the roof here, so I'm not quite sure what's intended structurally.
Well, originally, and I guess this is my question as far as the methodology of making the decisions correct so that when you go into the section views, things work out right. And so if you were to take the first and second floor walls the way I've shown them there, then what do you do with the area where the floor plate is, that whole section, on so that your exterior elevations look right, and so that the section, you have the sheathing going through, and then how do you clean up a detail like that where you've got a sloping roof coming in and hitting it there?
Okay. So we have multiple things going on here. I'd rather start in terms of cleaning up the model and, sort of teaching things with some simpler part where perhaps we have the wall stacking but no roof joining. Also potentially how you want to represent the walls here. So, and, the wall and ceiling. So let's actually start right here, if it's okay with you. We have a wall coming up, and I assume this oh, this is a joist. Okay, so you have your joist that we're cutting through, so we're not actually seeing the floor. So what we're cutting through it in the joist. So you're actually running 3D framing through the building.
Say that one more time.
So you have this as a joist, so we don't actually have a floor slab in this section here. Where do you have floors taking this volume up or not?
Well, the joist is running in that direction, so we have the gyp on the underside of it and then the floor sheathing above it. So we're just looking at the side of the joist.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So in terms of this element, so you have the slab as the finished floor here. Would the wall be sitting on top of this plywood here?
Right.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right. So this is then correct. All right. So this is our joist. So what I'm more used to seeing, and certainly it's just a question of my tendencies in terms of modeling, is to be working with a floor slab that's composite, and then doing framing within that. Now you've got here, this is drywall, gypsum board, and the wall is coming up and they're overlapping each other. So here's something that we definitely would want to clean up, because obviously the gyp board shouldn't be going through here. It should be stopping and starting. Am I correct there?
Yeah, so that the gyp board would hit the wood wall framing, and then the wall gyp board would come and stop up underneath the ceiling gyp board.
Okay, so let's look at that. So we'll start out with a simple part, and then we'll look at more complex things. So first of all, I'm going to double check that under our project preferences under construction elements to make sure that don't have this checked. So one of the things that's limiting what ArchiCAD can do here is that this project is set up to use legacy methods for modeling elements. So it will not actually clean up this intersection automatically. You could do some solid element operations if you wanted, but it will not, clean it up based on the new methods because of this checkbox. Now, is this a project you started in 17?
Yes, I believe so.
So starting in 17, you'd want to turn this off. And I'll show you what happens when we do that. If you were migrating an older project into 17, then the default is to make this checkbox turned on so that it doesn't change in the middle of the project how things are being represented. But let's say that, at least this copy of the project, we're going to be working with the new methods for this. And in fact, we could turn off the symbolic display for single plane roofs. This is sort of a separate question, but we'll basically say, let's not use the legacy options. So when I say OK, we'll see that it's now immediately done an intersection analysis here. And so this slab, which is still a single element, is stopping when it bumps into the other element. Now, I think you were saying that you wanted to have the drywall here stop and have the ceiling drywall go to the core of the wall. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So if I select this wall and this slab at the same time and go to the options menu, element attributes, building materials, we'll see that gypsum board is one of the things that's being used here. And then here's gyp board ceiling, and here's 2x4 end wall. So these ones that are in green are the ones that are in use right now. Now you can see that the 2x4 end wall is the now this says it's appearing. Oh no, if I highlight it here, okay, here's this. This is it's got a certain fill in here and a certain priority. And let's look the gypboard for the ceiling, and then we have this gypsum board. Now this gypsum board, so let's just see. It looks like this. If I'm guessing correct, that this was set up to have the gypsum board for the wall using this one, and the one that says it's for the ceiling over here. It looks like it actually should, the ceiling one should have priority. But let's just take a look and double check that we've got this set up properly. I'm going to select just this, and it says it's made out of gypsum board, and here's this number, okay? So it's actually not the one that says ceiling, whereas this one, if I say I'd like to edit the selected composite, it says it's using the ceiling. So that's our problem, is that you're using a material for the wall that was designated as a ceiling gypboard that had a higher priority. And that's why, in this case, the wall one is going all the way up and the ceiling one is stopping short. So what we'd want to do is change this. Now, we've got a huge mess here in terms of the building materials. You can see lots of gypsum boards, lots of plywoods, lots of all of these things. This comes from having migrated a version 16 project into 17. So you probably took your standard A project from 16 and opened it in 17 and said, let me just delete the building and move forward. Or you took your standard template from 16 into 17 and did the same thing. Is that one of those things the case?
The first would be the case.
Yeah. So what you've got now is a big mess in terms of, you can see a lot of duplicate parts here. Now, the difference between all of these ones that say gypsum board here with numbers is that in the original file that this came from, they all were in building components that were placed in the project or defined as composites. And they all had slightly different references. Maybe you used different pen numbers. Maybe you had some other setting that was slightly different. So ArchiCAD said, you know what, in order to match what you had earlier, we'll create variations of the gypsum board that each one is slightly different. But in general, given what I see for most people, those are not useful variations. They just were accidental ones. So one of the things we're going to do is go to the definitions for the building materials, and we'll coalesce them. So I'm going to sort them by name instead of by priority. And we'll see here now we have all of these gypsum boards that are similar. You notice actually that some have this priority that's very strong, whereas most of them have a priority that's very weak. And gypsum board should be weak because it should give way to the framing and the core and many other things. But what I'm going to do is actually select all of these here, with the exception of one of them, and delete them and say anywhere where they come up, I'm going to replace it with this one. So I'm going to use the delete here, and this is a feature in ArchiCAD 17 that applies in a number of places, including layers and other attributes, where we can say when I delete it, I don't want to just get rid of it. I want anything that's referring to it, like composites that maybe have this gypsum board referred to. I want to replace it with, say, this particular one here. So now when I say do that, you can see that now all of those disappeared, and now anything that referred to them is now over here. So now we've simplified it a bit. It looks like this one is another one we can just delete and replace with this gypsum board here. So now we have only one that says gypsum board, and for now I'm going to go and just delete the 10-digit ending because there's no point in doing that. Now you notice a slight change that happened here because one of the this particular gypsum board was using one of the deleted types, and it now is slightly different version. It was substituted with the one, where is it? With this one here, with this black pen. So it became a sort of a grayer one here. We can maybe change this to the gray to make it even lighter. Now, this is not actually in use right now. In other words, it's not in, let's see, no, actually, yeah, so it's not in this particular composite. What we're going to do is actually now tell this composite to use that gypsum board, and then we'll have the ceiling one. We'll still retain that for now as a higher priority version of it. So I'm not going to try to clean everything up perfectly. I'm just going to do the basics to teach you the principles here. So what we'll do is we'll go to this particular composite. We'll edit it, and we'll change it. So instead of using the ceiling one, we're going to be using the regular gypsum board. And again, we'll use the regular gypsum board here. So now I didn't change the thickness. All I did was just say use normal gypsum board. And then you can see now, because these are actually using the same gypsum board, it's connecting them. Now that could be a simple way to represent it, or if you wanted this to be actually to go across, because it is a separate piece, then we would want to switch this to the ceiling gypsum board. And right now it has a question mark, or question mark inches, so I guess it could be a variable thickness, but I'll switch it to that. And now you can see that we've got this one coming across and the other one stopping dead. So does that make sense?
Yeah, all those 10-digit numbers, they were freaking me out. So it's helpful to know how to get rid of them easily.
Yeah, so you basically want to select a bunch of them, leaving at least one left, delete them, and replace it with the one that you left behind. And so you can simplify all of those, because essentially they're variations that are not useful to you. So now does this section look, or this part of the section look more the way you want?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so we've cleaned up one thing in terms of this graphic, as well as the, just teaching a little bit about cleaning up the attributes. When you have a project that was migrated from 16 and you want to work with it in 17 properly. So if you're setting up your 17 template, rather than buying something like master template already done, then you'd need to clean up all of that stuff so you have a better starting point. Now let's look here. So this wall is sitting on top of the plywood, which makes sense. What's going on is this sort of the end of this is an open space for the staircase.
Right, and the joist is running a little too long. It's lined up with the edge of the face of the gyp, and it should be just lined up with the edge of the framing.
Right. Okay.
Otherwise, it's correct.
Right. Okay. So let's see this line here. Let's see. Actually, I guess we probably can't stretch it. This is okay. That's probably dragging it. I don't want. Actually, maybe it. This is an object. Right now, it is 13.8 5/8 long. If I were to edit this here, no, this is dragging it. It's not stretching it. Yeah, I'd have to do that on the floor plan. So let's zoom in on that floor plan. So we're on S4. I'm going to go and say select section marker on the home story and zoom to it. So here we can see where that is, and that here's the staircase, and here is, I guess, where that where is the
right where you are there.
Okay, here's the slab. That's the top one, and so there's a wall. This is the wall that we were seeing in the section.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, this wall, I can't quite tell. Does it have gypboard? It's
yeah, it's just shown. You can actually change the way it appears if you want to see the whole thing. But
right.
It's a pony wall, so.
Right now we're looking at a design one here. So we look at construction. Okay, so what?
It's a short wall, so you're just seeing the top of it.
Oh, okay, because it's a short wall. All right, that's fine.
On the left, you'll see a little dashed line which represents the edge of the floor sheeting. And if you find the center line of the joist, then you'll see
that's the edge. All right, so that's okay. All right, and so was this the?
That's the joist, and they only give you pickup points at the very end. So there you go.
Right. Okay. All right, so I can take here, and this now it has, I can adjust the beam length and I can shorten it. Here.
Right.
So we'll just go back to that, was it number 4 here? And so now we can see this particular one has been shortened. Of course, the other ones also need to be shortened. We're seeing something behind it. Now, in terms of the way we would draw this, if I were to drag this down, so I'm just going to try dragging it here. You can see that, of course, I changed the height of it a little bit, but you can see that it's automatically dropping the drywall down, and the sheathing has priority. So that's sort of looking more correct, although this drywall would come down and wrap down to here.
Yes.
Okay, so let me undo that there. What I want to do is actually then potentially stretch this down to here. Now, when I do that, you can see that it sort of stopped at this slab, or it gave way, but then the core went through. Now, the issue here is that this particular slab is not a composite. Of course, it is just a simple component, but without it being a composite and defined as a core, it won't stop this wall from proceeding down through there. So in other words, the automatic cleanup isn't going to happen properly. So let me just undo that, and let's just see if we go to the floor plan here. And so this slab here right now is, if we open it, if we look at it, it is a simple component here, and that's the ceiling one.
Yeah, you have to tab to get the plywood.
Okay. So there's the plywood. Okay. So and by the way, you have a surface floor. I mean, you have the floor finish as one piece and the drywall as a separate piece. Have you considered creating this as a composite that spans between them, so it's a single element?
Yeah, and I've done that in the past. What happens is that the plywood floor sheeting would continue around the entire second floor, but the gypboard starts and stops, and so I don't know if I can use a composite continuously throughout.
Well, actually, because of the way ArchiCAD is now, handling these intersections, it can resolve that a lot better. After all, we're now seeing that this gypboard is giving way here and stopping and starting.
Okay, so as long as the floor section dimension stays the same, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know your construction. Obviously, if you have some parts of it that have a different flooring, you have carpet in certain areas and wood floor in others, then you may have to do something different. But let's do an experiment here with this. So if I measure, so I'll just measure here. So we have 1 foot 3 and 3/8, and let's see. So we've got this is 5/8, and this is 3/4. Okay, so 3/4 and 5/8 here. So let me. Do you happen to have a composite that would match that or not?
I don't believe so.
All right, so we'll create a composite here. So I'm going to go to just something that it would be. See, do you have any floor composites? I don't know your system here.
Well, I just created it yesterday. So E is existing and N is new, and so mainly the roofs and walls. And I haven't gotten any floors done.
All right, so we'll just create a new one. And so is this going to be existing?
This will be new.
This will be new. And we'll just, I'm just going to give it a name that will stand out, that it's a floor test, all right? And so we're going to pick here, so we had a plywood. Now we've got all of this mixture of plywood here, so let's take the plywood floor. and what was it, 3/4 inch?
Yes.
And then we'll add a skin for, this would be the airspace or framing, and let's see, we'll just use airspace for right now. We may have to refine this later, but this is, what is the size of your joist?
They're 14s, but I don't know. I think they
All
have
right,
a
we'll do 14
precise
inches for
size.
now, and
Let's
we'll
do
fine tune
14.
it. Let's just and create a new skin, and this would be the chipboard. Whoops, not here. I want a new insert a skin, and this one will be the chipboard for the ceiling here, and this is 5/8.
Right.
So 1 foot 3 3/8. Is that correct, or was
I
it?
think that sounds right. Yeah.
Sorry. So this is um, potentially right now. What we want to do is make sure that this is the core, and this is finish, and this is finish. Well, that's certainly finish, and this one I'm not quite sure whether this would be considered, since this is a subfloor, how that would work. So we may want to make this actually
I think it would be.
core. All right, let's make it core because it's going to be it's structural, right?
Right.
And the walls sit on top of it. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I've defined this new one here, and let's just in this area. So what I'm going to do is actually do a little test. I'm going to take your slab here and just pull it back a bit. Take the other slab here, that's the chipboard, and we'll pull it back. So I'm deliberately just doing it separate so we can see them easily here. And then I'm going to use the new slab, and we're going to pick this as a composite. We're going to pick the new floor test here. And let's see, in terms of its top, or its reference height, let's just say that it's on the 0 of this story. We can adjust it later. And that would be potentially the top of the whole thing that we're looking at. So I'm going to just, and let's see, what layer, this is your floor, and it's on 3D floor framing. So let me just, let's just put this new thing on the 3D floor framing. All right, so, and do something like that. I actually want to pull it back just that hair to here. So now let's take a look in that section and see what we've got. So we're not seeing that there. So did I not do it in the right section?
Oh, it's just down too
the wrong
far.
height. Is it the?
It's right down below. Keep going down to your left.
Oh, okay. So I put it at 0 for that story. So your story level must be sort of.
Well, the existing house has a plate line of 8'1", and my client wants the garage to have a higher ceiling, so the new floor plate for the second floor is up higher.
Okay. All right. So then I'm just going to drag this up here.
Yeah.
Okay. So I did get the dimensions right here. And now you can see that this slab is looking, pretty much the same there. We have the drywall overlapping it because I didn't pull it back to the same extent. So we won't worry about that for now. But it looks the same over here at the end. And now if I select this and I stretch this down, you can see that the core of the wall stops on top of this core. The sheathing, the drywall comes down and terminates properly here. So is that?
Yeah, that's exactly how it should look.
Okay.
The base then of that wall, or the starting height of that wall, changes then, right?
That's right. So your references in terms of, this is a particular interior condition. So we need to drop this down. There's no interior wall underneath it. In terms of an exterior thing, we would usually take the exterior wall up its top up to the top of the core, and then take the top wall down to above the core. Or you potentially they can both meet at the zero of the story of the top of finished floor if that's what you want. In any event, in an exterior condition, the sheathing would basically cover the outside because it would have a higher priority, or actually the floor would just stop dead. Right now, as we can see, I've stopped the floor manually here, allowing the sheathing to continue unimpeded.
So the height, if we're looking at an exterior wall then, and we stretch a first floor wall up to the top of the second floor framing, then the height of that wall is determined by the tallest or highest skin.
Yeah, I mean, there are different variations of how you can do it, but essentially you want to make the bottom wall and the top wall meet somewhere along this continuum, and it could be top of core or it could be top of finish. It'll depend upon what you need. So let's take a look at a condition on the outside of the building where we can deal with this. So here we have a more complex situation. So let's take if there's a simpler one. Would one of the other sections have just not have a roof where the walls and floor?
Yeah, I think you'll have to look at the plan. I don't recall 3 or 5, whichever it might be. And on the the 5, no, 5 will have a roof too. I don't have a section drawn through where place we don't have a roof. If you want to, you can just slide one of those roofs out of the way, and we'll treat it like it doesn't have a roof coming into it.
So take this roof away for now?
Yeah, just take that roof away, and you can see I'm messing around with them anyway. So
yeah, all right. So you're okay. There's our guide. Interesting. Why is it the guideline is not showing up here? Okay, and your angle. Okay, right now your distance and angles are coming up using surveyor's measurements. So you must have changed your project preferences for working units to be in surveyor's units here. Is that?
I was probably working on a site plan.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to switch it back to decimal degrees here, and now if I drag this, now
I don't know why the
guideline we're not getting any snaps to the zero. So let's go to our work environment, mouse constraints and methods, and or guidelines here. Relative to active guidelines. Okay, that increment should be good. Horizontal, vertical. So why is it not showing in terms of the guidelines, showing main direction? So if I just draw a wall, okay, there is a guideline there at the 0. So I was just wondering why when I drag this, I'm not seeing the guideline come up to help me to snap to the 0.
I don't know.
So that's a mystery. If anybody on the call can help with that, that would be good. I can just drag this and use the Shift key, which will lock it, and then I can type in a distance, let's say 8 feet. So I'll just move it out of the way here. So any particular preference for one of these sections at this point?
Well, we've been working with
S4. Okay.
S4. There's another little roof you probably might want to drag away.
Okay. Well, but this is all right. So what I'll want to do is just extend this over and see how it works. So let's go to so that's that slab. I'm going to take this little piece that I've got. We'll take it over. Now, in terms of the wall, as I zoom in on it, so not having a snap. Okay, there's the snap point. No, but that didn't snap quite right here. But I just need to make sure that's the roof. That's the slab, which is the new test. All right, so the wall here. Okay, here's your framing line. And so what's outside here? You've got
sheet 3/8 plywood sheathing.
And then what's beyond here?
Stucco, 7/8 stucco.
Okay, all right. We'd want the sheathing to continue beyond the slab, right? So if I get this slab here and I pull this back to there. Okay, so now it is in line there. Let's go back to that section. Of course, I've got extra overlaps because I've got the original thing plus here you can see that the slab that I've just selected is going out to here, and we've also got the framing within that cavity there. And we'll need to do some solid element operations if we want to get the best result, but for now we can leave it. Now, if I take this this wall here and we stretch this up, oh, actually, is this one wall?
No, I probably.
Oh, maybe I had selected two of them. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to select this and stretch it up to here. Now, at this point, it's obviously the core is going up, which is not what we want. We can see that this wall and the lower wall are cleaning up in terms of the exterior. This is the slab test, and so what's happening is that we're seeing that this is stopping dead. The core of this outer wall has a higher priority than either the plywood here or the framing material that we've got there. So in order to adjust that, we need to sort of see what these are. So I'm going to select the slab and the wall and go to the building materials and say, all right, so right now we've got the end wall. This is the wall thing. We'll sort it by priority so we can see. This is the core of the wall, which has the highest priority. The airspace here, which is the framing, is actually much lower, and the plywood, of course, is still also lower. Now, for now, I'm just going to do an experiment. If I were to grab the airspace and move it down and say that the airspace really isn't air, it's a framing area, and I'm just going to put it up. I'm going to move it down to below the framing of the wall. So what that did was it basically said it's going to automatically give it a higher priority, high enough that it'll have priority over the framing of the wall. And now we have plywood that would be probably, because we were working with the plywood floor, and we have the plywood sheathing here. Now, in this case, the plywood sheathing, we're stopping the floor before it, so we can leave this plywood potentially less, but we do need to make it stronger than the wall if the core of this wall, is the core of this wall going to sit on top of the plywood sheathing here or not?
Yes.
So basically this the plywood flooring is going to come in all the way?
All the way to the back side of the wall sheathing, yeah.
Right, okay. So then what we want to do is make this plywood flooring element have a higher priority than the core of this wall. And the plywood sheathing, these two will never intersect because you're going to stop one before the other, but maybe we'll just reposition them so that the flooring has lower priority than the outside one. So now I say OK, and you can see it has redrawn this to give the effect that we want. So we have the flooring coming up, the wall interior fitting on top of it, of course the drywall's sitting on top of it, this one coming up to underneath this framing space, and of course we've got right now we've got the ceiling one. It's overlapping. We've got the extra. We've got both your original ceiling and the little piece of composite ceiling coming in here. But is this looking more like what you want?
Yeah, that's very nice. Yeah,
Okay.
I've
Now
got my joist in the
we
wrong
do
spot.
have your framing here, or this piece. It looks like it's sticking into that. So
Yeah, it needs to slide over a little bit, but otherwise
although it's
everything.
interesting that the handle is here, I'm not sure. Oh, you know what? Maybe it's something beyond that. Maybe because it's the
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe there's something else that we're seeing beyond that. Let's see what is. Well, that's the
Oh,
wood eye joist. Okay, so the wood eye joist is
yep.
going too far. So you have two things. You have this. You have the uh,
The rim joist is in the right location, but
rim
the
joist is in the right location, but this eye joist is going too far. So if I go back in here and we select um, there, that is, we can see that it's actually going just a hair too far. So we'll take this back to here and now go back to the section. And now this is clean. So how does that look for what your needs are?
that looks fantastic.
Okay, so the lesson here, and we've taken a good chunk of the coaching call on it, but I think it is so critical to understand how these building materials, when they're used properly, can essentially help you to get sections to look correct. You need to uh, draw with a composite, so that's why I said we're creating this entire floor assembly as a composite because then the walls can interact with it properly. We need to make sure that the components have, uh, say, good relationship to each other in terms of priorities. Uh, One of the things that Graphisoft did that I think is brilliant was instead of just saying you have to figure out these numbers, they said if you select elements and you have them pre-selected before you go into the building materials dialog, you'll see which ones are in use because you see their little green color, and you can literally drag them around to get them into a better order. So you don't have to type in numbers and sort of experiment that way. You can literally just drag them into which one's stronger. Now, what I typically recommend is for something like this slab here, that instead of calling this airspace, we call it framing. We call it something related to that, so that because air by itself has, one at least conceptually, you think of it as not being very strong. But if it's a framing cavity, then it represents something that is strong. Whether depending upon how you do your joists, it's obviously got rigidity and priority over other elements, even though parts of it may be filled with insulation or empty air. But structurally, it's got priority. So that's why we'd call it framing space rather than airspace. Um, all right, so now we've got this cleaned up, and if we were to move that um, uh, roof back into position, so if I drag it back, I think I had it 8 feet. Now, question is, what should be going on over here? So it looks like, just I'm guessing that you'd want the uh, sheathing here to stop on top of this plywood.
We would have the sheathing probably would go through. It kind of depends, but have the sheathing go through, have the roof
Stucco.
sheathing hit that, and then have the stucco. Then it gets pretty complicated with flashing and the
Of,
stucco.
of course, it's going to be somewhat complicated, but
Right.
let's just say conceptually that the roof you've got the framing, you've got sheathing, and then what's this component on the top?
Asphalt shingles.
Okay, the asphalt shingles. So the asphalt shingles obviously should have a lower priority than this. Uh, what do you call it? Than the outside of the
The,
building sheathing,
the wall sheathing.
the wall sheathing, and the asphalt shingles. I would imagine you'd want them to stop before the stucco. You do the stucco
Right.
first. All right. Now, one of the things is that ArchiCAD will not do an intersection between these elements just because they happen to bump into each other. It requires that you select these elements, in this case the wall and the roof, and you use a command that is available under by right-clicking. Um, let's see, that it's under Connect menu that's called Merge Elements. Now, what Merge Elements does is it doesn't group them, it doesn't sort of make them uneditable, but it basically says that these elements should talk to each other about how how they trim. So it's a command that was added in ArchiCAD 17, or has a special function in ArchiCAD 17 for cleaning up roofs and walls. And I've been learning about it. I wouldn't say I'm fully 100% there for knowing it, but I think this is what we're going to do: is merge the elements. And you can see that as soon as I do that, it starts to do a different type of relationship. So even though the roof still sticks into here, it's giving way, just like the walls and the floor were, in terms of the whole new system. Now, right now we've got the stucco coming all the way down, which is not correct. So let's just take a look at what we need to adjust here. So if I select this roof and I say edit the selected composite, it's got a 2x10 in here, and the 2x10 clearly should be stronger than the stucco, right?
Yes.
And then it has the plywood. This plywood has a funny number, so remember, we've got all of these plywoods, which are going to be awkward to deal with. So let's clean this up here. So I'm going to go, first of all, to, actually, we'll select both of these here so we can see them. We can go to the building materials with them selected, and we can see here's that 2x10. It has no priority, So we need to drag this down. So even just by doing that, we're going to have a much better result. If we say, if we make a roof with this 2x10, it should be stronger than, should be stronger than the stucco for sure. So we'll move it down.
I love that drag and drop.
Yeah.
On the priority select.
So let's just do that, see what happens there. I say OK. And you can see now the 2x10 is stronger than the stucco. So now we're already a heck of a lot better. Now we want to also get this this plywood, to be stronger than the stucco. So we go to Element Attributes, Building Materials, and this is one of the plywoods. Let's see what it is. So it's probably this plywood here, and so we can grab that and take it down, and again, just put it above this above the stucco. So now we probably want the 2x10 to be stronger than the plywood, and so you can see how now we've got this arranged. Plywood stronger than stucco. Let's say OK, and now, so how's that?
Yeah, that's looking a lot better now. The stucco itself above the asphalt shingles, I guess you would have higher priority on the shingles than the stucco, because the stucco will ultimately need to go up and have a screed and have flashing that would come down over the top of the shingles.
All right, so the shingles should have higher priority. All right, so again, we can just simply select these two and go to Building Materials and say that the shingles, where are they?
I think it was brick face.
Oh, you have it as brick face. Okay.
So yeah, don't ask me why.
All right, so let's change that. Let's make sure that this isn't an odd thing. So if we define this composite and say this top shouldn't be brick face, it should be something else. Now maybe there aren't any shingles in this particular file, so we don't have roof stuff.
Yeah, I don't think there are.
Okay, now you probably aren't using, I'm guessing you probably aren't using that brick face, where is it? Brick face. You probably aren't using it for real brick anywhere, right?
Right.
So let's just rename that. So just to make it clear, we'll go to the Options, Element Attributes. Well, actually, that's right. We can just do Building Materials. And let's take that brick face and we'll rename it here. And we'll call this Asphalt Shingles. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now Phil can still be using the brick face. or we could pick something else. So there's, let's see, is there anything that would make sense to switch it to?
Well, I was hoping that the hatch in the 3D view would be tighter than it shows up. But
Okay, here's shingle, but that's intended to be a shingle in on a plan, as
how about
opposed.
solid plus dashed right below that?
Okay, so solid plus dashed. All right, so we're going to say that this is what it'll look like in section, and we want this shingle to be higher priority than the stucco, right?
Right.
And I guess right now it's we'll just reposition it. We don't have the wall selected, so that's why the stuccos aren't highlighted, but I've just moved them up above there. So I say OK, and you can see now it's coming in. It looks like that section fill is not quite as tight as you want, right?
Right. That's fine.
So you can adjust that. All right. Yeah. So what we've done in the course of the last, most of an hour, is we've explored how the building material hierarchy of priorities can be used to great advantage to get these sections to look correct. We've looked at how when you migrate a project from 16 to 17, that under the project preferences, you need to go into construction elements and turn off the legacy intersection methods in order to be able to use all of these things. So that's that. Before we could do any of this, we had to turn that off so that we would be using the full set of ArchiCAD 17 capabilities. We looked at, just in general, how when you bring things forward from ArchiCAD 16, you're going to have, or previous versions, you're going to have a whole bunch of elements that are very similar in name, but with different 10-digit endings. And these variations, for the most part, are not very useful. So I would just literally select all of them except one. Here, all of these 2x6s at 16, and just say delete them and replace them with one of them. And now the list gets shorter. Take all of the 2x6 wood studs at 16. Well, I guess there's spruce number 2, and then there's R19 bats. So these are somewhat different, but I would just delete this one and replace it with the simple one above it. Take this one and delete it and replace it with the one above it. So we're basically simplifying it. Later you can go in, remove these numbers. Mm-hmm. Whoops, I didn't mean to hit the enter key. I just wanted to confirm that. So this is the way that you're going to have a simpler environment to work with. Now, the final piece of this puzzle is that we only have the building materials that came from your earlier project file. That these were created when ArchiCAD looked at the fills that were part of composites and converted them into building materials. You don't have all of the standard building materials that are in ArchiCAD 17. You're missing all of that. Let me just go and clean up these 2x4s at 16 here and put this in here. So you're going to take this down and you'll end up with a smaller set as you take all of these concrete structurals and delete them and replace them with the concrete structural. You notice that they're gray here, so it makes it a little bit easier to see which ones to choose. I generally leave the one above it being the one that I'm going to replace it with. But if we go and just go through that, you can see it's pretty quick to clean up a lot of these things. We have all of these plywoods here that all look slightly different, but they probably are not a sensible thing. Now, after you've done that and go through just a lot of stuccos here. After you've done that, you'll want to bring in the, you can see this list is now much, much shorter than it was here. You'll want to bring in the ones from the ArchiCAD 17 template. Now, before I do that, I'm just going to save the project because the work that I've done here is actually very good. I'll send the file back to you so you can work with it. I don't think that there's anything I've done here that is going to get in your way. You will obviously have to clean up your floor and ceiling thing because I just put in one little piece of the composite. I didn't go and replace your entire floor ceiling thing around the building. But I'm going to save this. Now, what I'm going to do next is just demonstrate how you can bring in the building materials from the standard ArchiCAD 17 template. This is something that there may be some other steps for cleanup that we won't have time to look at, but I want to show you the basics. If I go to the Element Attributes Attribute Manager, I can look at what we've got, for example, in the building materials, which is what we were working on. And I can go open another file by clicking this open button. And the file that we generally would want to work with is the one that comes with ArchiCAD. If I go to the ArchiCAD 17 folder, in the defaults folder within that, there is a folder with one or more standard templates. Now in the US, they have residential and commercial. They're actually almost identical. There are a few more layer combinations and views and schedules in the commercial template, but the attributes for building materials and things are the same. So it doesn't really matter for this purpose here. If you were in the international version, there's only one template that Graphisoft supplies. But you can see here, these are all of these building materials. There's just a very large array of them. And one of the things that's different is that they have a numeric sequence here, so like 22 or 41. These relate to the CSI standard numbers. You don't have to keep them, but I would suggest when you first bring it in, you leave them alone, and maybe you just get used to them. Maybe you'll even enjoy them because you can look them up in terms of CSI stuff. For those of you outside the US, CSI stands for Construction Specifications Institute, I believe, and it's a system for construction materials organization and CAD file standards and things like that. In any event, what I want to do is select all of these, and I don't want to overwrite here because that would mean that if it had any of the same thing, like 19 is underlayment and 19 here is plywood, maybe actually the plywood here should be an underlayment, but in general, we don't want to take the risk that that things like 40 is grouting and here it's gypsum board. We don't want to overwrite that. What we want to do is just simply append, and what that'll do is it'll put them at the end. So you can see there are now a whole bunch of ones with higher numbers, and they all are down below the ones that were here. You can see all of these new ones. And I'll say, okay, what it's going to do is it's going to bring in it's going to add a bunch of fills that these refer to. It's going to add all of these surfaces and building materials. So it's basically adding a bunch of stuff to the file. Now your project file won't change in appearance, but now if we go to any building material, or the building materials where we were looking, we're going to see that in addition to the ones that we were previously looking at, we've got this whole new system there. And they not only have sort of sensible priority numbers and naming without the 10 digits, but they also have information about the thermal properties. So if you were to use, try to do some energy analysis, these would be available. You'll also just have, a whole lot of different things. So imagine that there's probably a shingle in here. Asphalt shingles, for example. So this would be the material that we'd want to use ideally for your roof, as opposed to the one that we had created, which was this one. This one has no thermal properties, and so anyway, those are so what I've just done in this version of the file is to bring in the resources from the standard template in relationship to building materials. I recommend that, although it may be for your initial work, it may be more confusing just because you have now all these extra materials you're not using. Does that make sense, Greg?
Yeah, but I think ultimately I would select the roofs changed from the old asphalt non-smart
Mm-hmm.
material to the one that was just imported, and then delete the old one, right?
Yeah, you could do that. So we can select this roof here. Say I want to edit the selected composite, and we'll see that it has the one that we created here. We can change it to be the one that's in here and say OK. And now if we go back to that section, let's just see that the section priorities still are working. So now it actually is a higher priority. That's interesting. So this roof.
We just moved the roof over a little.
Okay, so did I accidentally move the roof?
No, when you moved it back, it was actually originally in the wrong location. So now it's in the right location.
All right, so now you can see that it's cleaning up in this way, and so this is the new asphalt shingle here, and of course it's actual graphic representation you may want to play around with, but we now have it's using the standard materials. Okay, so I think this is probably a good point to make a transition if that's okay with you, Greg.
Just one last question. When we deal with the walls on the exterior there and we start and stop them, what I'm always beset with is the window and door heights.
Mm-hmm.
So if I take the upper floor wall and I stretch it down to get the skin to go down, then I've got to make an adjustment. And since my floor composite is 1 foot 3 3/8 inches, it really gets confusing when I try to figure out, okay, my window height is no longer like a 6'8" head height.
Okay. All right. So right now, this particular, a few comments there. This particular window is set to have a specific sill height. So in other words, you told it that you cared about its sill height rather than its head height. If I say I want to switch it to looking at the header, then it would be saying 7 foot 10 3/4. So that's what it's set at. You can set it at either one of these, just whatever's most convenient. You know, I tend to think of windows being set as a common head height, and the sill may vary depending upon the height of the window, but really could be whatever you need. But there also is an option to say I want to set the header to the story. Now, right now, that's saying that the story, because you have your storyline, I guess you're not showing the storylines here, but the story, let's go to the section settings and at least temporarily show the story levels for display. So your storyline is not set in relationship to this part of the building.
Right.
And so it's going to be a little bit confusing, but basically in a simple case, the storyline will give you a good reference that you can set your windows and doors to, and even if your wall was to move down, you wouldn't have to worry about that because you're just setting the window or door height relative to the story. Now in this case, you can see that we got a perfectly good result by keeping the wall on top of, at the zero for that, let's say the top of the structural floor here, and we took the lower wall up, and it did just fine. Sometimes you may want to take this upper wall down, its bottom down, and then your calculations to the top of the, for the window would change. If we look at this, we have where we're not seeing the wall. This is a door, but we're not seeing the wall here. So why are we seeing the door but not the wall?
I don't know.
All right, let's just look at the section settings and say model display, uncut elements, fill it with nothing. Okay, so that means that's why we can't select it. We can say uniform pen color here, and just make it background, and let's say OK. Now I can select things. So basically, you had it saying that anything that wasn't being cut through, we wouldn't see the surface. We wouldn't be able to select it. Now I can actually select this wall here. Now, we could set the wall base down if this was we wanted to put it down into if we had a finished floor. Right now you've got just a structural floor, so it's appropriate that it's there. But the door, when we select the door, it's set to be 0 relative to the wall base. If we were to move the wall down, then it's possible the door might need to be raised up so its threshold was above, the carpet or above, some finished floor.
Yeah. So what I do basically is I leave it at 0, and then when I figure out what the floor finish is, then I boost the door up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I guess it sounds like having the wall start at the floor level and go up is better than stretching it down, like on the exterior wall.
I think it may be simpler in terms of your mental calculations for windows, window heights, but since you have the option in general to reference the windows and doors relative to the story, it could work the other way. So it depends upon the way that you're constructing your model. For now, I'd say for you, you've got enough to learn here. I would say just leave, the wall starting here and take this other wall up to it, and just make sure you're putting a composite going through, and the composite for the slab for the structural for the plywood, the structure, and the gypsum should go only out to the face of framing, and
Right.
That will allow the sheathing and the stucco to just sort of pass by without worrying about the priorities.
Super.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
All right. Well, glad to answer your questions. I'm sure that it's a problem that other people have been facing. So I will save this version of the model with a slightly different name so that we have a version with the new attributes. So I'll just do this and put this back in here. All right, so I'll be able to send that to you later, Greg, and
Super.
We'll move on.
Greatly appreciated.
Oh, my pleasure. I see a comment from Steve Nickel. Eric, that was outstanding and illuminating about materials. Excellent. Well, thank you, Steve. If you liked this ArchiCAD coaching program session, you'll love the Best Practices course. Get my personal assistance on your ArchiCAD related questions. The ArchiCAD coaching program is included when you enroll in the Best Practices course, which has a comprehensive series of training lessons for beginners, intermediate, and advanced topics. For more info and to sign up, please visit www.acbestpractices.com. This has been Eric Bobrow. Thanks for watching.